All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This episode is part of a series in which I will be interviewing experts in the field of property, whether purchasing a family home or an investment. The series is designed to assist you in making better and smarter property decisions. Part of owning property and buying property is also selling property. And as part of our property series, I wanted to talk today about selling a house or selling property in general. So whether it's a family home, whether it's an investment property, and just things that you should be aware of, because not many people that have property have actually sold property in the past. So when I thought about property and selling it, I thought of Zishaan Omar immediately. Zishaan is the owner of 4 Ray White offices, Rochedale Village, Logan City, and Central Sunnybank. And I see his achievements, has recently won some awards. And the impression I get is that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to property. So Zishaan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. Like, as many people I know personally have owned so much property and will own so much property, but they may not have sold property before. And those listening to this episode might be people that are thinking of selling their current house, or those that are thinking of getting into property buying and selling. And I wanted to really talk about this topic because you've obviously seen what works and what doesn't work over the years. Could you sort of maybe explain the process briefly just on selling a house? Like, if somebody decides to sell a house, obviously they'd find an agent first and they'd call that agent, but how does that process normally go from a seller's point of view?
So the first thing I would recommend, Michael, is to do your research. I think that's really important. There's no one size that fits all in real estate. It's a tailored approach. I would recommend to evaluate your circumstances. Some people are motivated by price, whereas other people are motivated by circumstances. So what I mean by that is, some people need to achieve a certain price in order for them to move on, whereas other people have to move on. They have no other choice but to sell their property. So do your research, look at what's selling in the area, look at the prices being achieved, look at the days on market, how well those properties are being presented, and then assess it. If it aligns with what you want to do and you feel this is right, then I would recommend then start the process and get in touch with a local agent and start building a relationship with them.
So what are 5 top tips that you'd give to somebody that is thinking of doing something to their house to give it that extra appeal?
The first thing I would say is, make your street appeal on point. Buyers tend to drive around the home before they actually come through to inspect it. The second thing I would say, clean up, declutter the house, get rid of any unwanted items, do a really deep clean of all the areas. The third thing I would recommend is freshening up the house. A coat of paint goes a long way to lift the entire appeal of the house. A really quick and cost-effective way is to modernize your home is by changing the fixtures and fittings of it. The fourth thing I'd probably recommend would be to dress it up. So styling. If you're not good with styling your house, I'd recommend you get a stylist a professional stylist, to give you some advice around what colors would work for the area or the demographic that's looking to purchase. So, and the last thing I would recommend, and it's really important, is have world-class open homes. And what I mean by that is, people coming to your home to purchase it, you have to create that environment for them to fall in love with the house. So it really needs to stand out. So things like scented candles, nice music, make sure all the lights are switched on, even having a recipe book on display, and that, or sometimes I even notice some of my owners actually bake a cake and put it in an oven so it smells really good. So just things around that, could uplift the home and eventually get people emotionally connected to it, and in turn maximize the sale price of your home.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's sort of, instead of showing, having a house where people can come in and use their own imagination to think of what they could do with it, is to sort of to leave little to the imagination. Let show people, let them experience it, and many will still want to make a house their own. They'll still want to do things their own way, but it just the simple things that you've mentioned are not complicated, and they're not going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars to do. Yet it is going to make such a difference. I liken it to selling a car, for example. You normally clean the inside of the car and the outside, just so at least it's presentable.
Absolutely, yes. That's vital when selling anything. I think presentation is most important with real estate. So, yeah, like you can control the presentation of your house. You can't control where it's positioned. You can't control the price you're going to get. But if it's presented well, it gives you the best opportunity to create, like, first, lots of people coming through the property. And, what drives the price is competition will effectively drive the price of your home. So, in my opinion, I think presentation is vital and most important.
Yes, and that's where it helps to talk to, again, like an agent that knows the area, because they can tell you what people that have come through houses are looking for, what they like. Do they like fireplaces? Do they like cakes in the oven? Things like that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, absolutely. Like, I'm fortunate in my team. I have, and I think you'll have a chat to her. She's brilliant. Like, she's my stylist in my home, so she has better knowledge than I have on all this, on the presentation side of things. But she's phenomenal at what she does. So.
Well, I think we'll line that up for next week's episode, actually, because I think it's a whole episode talking about that, the whole styling, the whole positioning factor.
Yes, definitely. Like, I mean, I can give you a bit snippets about it, but in terms of recommendations, like, she does a full detailed recommendation with our clients, and it's quite valuable. I've listened to some of the things she has to say, and it's incredible. So it's good to have her on my team so she can assist some of my clients.
And apart from some of these, an agent that gives you these tips, can you sort of explain as well some things for somebody to look for when searching for a real estate agent? Because essentially it's just like when someone's looking for a financial planner or a babysitter. I'm sure there are some questions they should ask and things they should look out for and things they should probably avoid.
Sure. I think the first and foremost or most important thing, I think, is do your research first before you engage an agent. One thing I always say is energy doesn't lie. You'll feel it or trust your gut. So if they don't have energy around your property when they come in, how do you expect them to have energy with the buyers or have that enthusiasm which you need in order to get your property sold? So I think energy is vital. Another thing to be careful about is be careful about the agent that comes to your home and promises you a certain price, because really every home is only worth what a buyer is prepared to pay and a seller is willing to accept. Right? We can go on data. We can look at what's sold next door or what's sold in that same sort of suburb. But at the end of the day, ultimately, the buyer is the one that's going to determine the sale price of the house. So it's vital to be wary of the agent that promises the price. We as agents tend to refer that to the agent buying the listing. So what they do is I tell you, I'll get you $1 million for your house. And really you feel it's probably around the $800,000 mark, but they'll promise you higher and then try and work you down as the process goes. But yeah, so just be very wary of that, I think. I would also, in terms of, look for an agent that can, rather than promise you the price, look for an agent that can demonstrate their ability to negotiate and also how they handle the process to maximize the sale price for you, right? And also, will they be doing it in a specific time frame? How long will it take for them to get the job done? I think that those are things that you should consider when you are looking for an agent.
Yeah, no, that's good to know, because, I mean, just to sort of go back as well to like the process of selling a house, because once you find an agent, you then put it on the market, put up advertising at the front, the agent lists the house online on different websites, and then from there you get open homes and all the rest of it. And from experience, from what I've seen, there's nothing worse than engaging an agent that has, like what you said, overpromised or it doesn't provide that energy to get buyers to want to make offers or to even engage in the whole process, because it's an issue when people see a property that's been on the market for a while as well, isn't it? Because then they think, okay, what's wrong with the house? Maybe they're asking for too much. Maybe they're not serious about selling.
Absolutely. And coming back to that, where you just mentioned, sometimes the property is on the market too long. I think the main reason, yes, there could be something wrong with the house, right? But majority of the time is the agent has lost that enthusiasm around the property. So most agents, and even some in my office, is when we first list that house for sale, you're all excited because you're thinking, I got this new property coming to market. You're excited about it. All the energy is good around it. And you go by 1 week and you get an offer that the owner isn't happy with, and you move on. And before you know it, you pass 3-4 weeks. And as the weeks go by, the agents would tend to not do any more open homes on it, not be so active, don't communicate with their vendors as regularly as they should. And then they lose the energy around the listing. So that's what I was coming back. I was saying that energy is really important. So that's pretty much where I think, it's just that they lost that enthusiasm around the listing. And it's vital to have that good energy, because if you can sense it as a seller, you can imagine the buyers are sensing the same thing. No one wants, if a buyer walks into the house, we have to have so much energy around that listing and give them the confidence, because it's a scary process for a seller just as much as it is for buyers. Some buyers that we're working with are first-home buyers, never bought a property before, and it's a big decision, and it's a lot of money involved. So, you just have to have that energy around it, nurture them quite well through the process. Yeah, and then everything falls into place.
I like that you mentioned that. So nurturing, and you acknowledge that it's an emotional thing as well, because you're right. People selling a house could be, and those listening to this episode could be people that are literally selling the family home they've owned for 20 years, or they could be selling an investment property they've had for a couple of years. But either way, there's still that level of emotion attached to it. And you need to be able to, nurture that, like what you said, and just acknowledge that. And I feel, even for me, selling a house, if I felt an agent was emotionally not vested, but if they acknowledged, I guess, the emotions involved on our side, it just makes the decision a lot easier. It's like when you're about to, if you're pregnant and you go and you look for an obstetrician to, talk to about, you're talking to them about your baby, for example, that they have that level of emotion to them because they're looking after something that's really important to you.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And it's funny you mentioned the whole, energy thing as well, because I sort of liken it to selling something on Gumtree. I think the last thing I sold was probably a car, actually. And I remember the first week I was so excited, and after like 2 or 3 weeks, I was like, I'm over it. This I hate selling cars, and because you got sick of the phone calls, you sort of get discouraged. Does anybody even want it? Everyone's giving you low offers. It's like,
that's correct. And Michael, how was your energy the first time you picked up the phone when you first listed it to 3 weeks later? You would have, first time you were all excited about it, thinking, oh, that's my buyer. And then all of a sudden that person doesn't want to buy the car. And then you're going 3 weeks. I bet you when you answer that call 3 weeks later, your energy was a whole lot different. Oh, he's not buying it. So
it's so different. First it was like, hi, let me tell you about the power steering. And then the last call was like, what do you want? So it was just, I'm not taking low offers. Don't even think about it. I don't know who you are, but what do you want?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's correct.
These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a free 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au. What are some other questions that somebody can ask an agent, or what are some other things that they can suss out when they're looking for an agent for selling their house?
The 3 most important things that run through people's mind, or the 3 most important questions that people have, and is, how long is it going to take for me to sell this property? How much is it going to cost me? And how can I maximize that sale price? Right? And I think if your agent determines and shows good knowledge around those three things and or demonstrates to you how they're going to get the job done effectively, right? Then half your battle is there already. So you've already found an agent that can demonstrate the ability to answer those three questions effectively. But I also recommend challenge your agent around questions. So if they put a recommendation forward, right, challenge them with a question. Say, why do you feel that's like if they recommend a certain method of sale, ask them, why do you feel that's the best method of sale? See whether your agent can handle the objections. Can they handle it confidently? Are they, and that's effectively what you want from your agent, because as an agent, you deal with objections all the time. You deal with objections with buyers. You deal with objections constantly with buyers. And the thing is, if you can't handle an objection effectively with your buyers, right, how do you expect them to commit and put an offer in, right, to get it accepted? So.
Yeah, that is true. That is so true. And you've touched on maximizing sale price, but just to go to that first point as well, how long does it normally take to sell a house? Like I know it depends on how long the piece of string is. Every house is different, but generally speaking, what should someone expect?
So, the saying where people say usually your first offer is your best offer, right? So what we got to remember is we might be new, as sellers,
yes.
We might be new to the market, whereas our buyers could be researching and looking for, I'm working with some buyers who have been looking for 2 years and still haven't found the home that they like. So we are new to market. Buyers are old to market. That's what we got to understand. So if somebody sees the property for sale, usually our best buyers will come in the first week or two through the campaign, because they've been on our database. They get the personalized message inviting them. They see it online. It's a new one, and they've missed out on so many other open homes, and they've put offers in. They've missed out, and now finally they see the home that they love. Those ones, they're going to say, oh, you know what, I've wasted so many Saturdays looking at homes. I finally found the house that I really like. I'm going to put my best offer forward, right? So that's when they're saying, referring to your best buyers, sometimes might be your best offer might sometimes be your first one. That's usually what they mean, right? But the typical real estate process or cycle, how it works is your best offers are going to come in the first 2 weeks of a campaign. Your first 2 weeks, you're going to have the strongest of interest. And then after 2 weeks, it sort of dies down and the inquiry levels get low. And then, effectively you could be on the market for quite long. So
yes,
it's best to create some sort of urgency, have a time frame. But it's a very difficult question to answer how long exactly. I can tell you my average days on market, our office is 21 days. So that's how long it takes to sell.
Yeah, and that's still good in my opinion. Like it's as an average, that's actually fantastic, because as I said, I've seen properties sit there on the market for a very, very long time. There are issues with that, as I said, because then people start thinking, what's wrong with what's wrong with the house?
Yeah, what's wrong with the property?
Yeah. And what about cost as well? Just again, I know it depends on so many different factors, of course, but roughly what should somebody expect for it to cost?
So there's different components when it comes to the cost factors. So number one, you've got obviously the marketing and sprucing up the home for sale. So the general rule or the guide is that you should spend around 1% of what you think the sale price would be. So if you think your house is going to sell for $600,000, usually you should look at spending around $6,000, and that's from marketing, like from the marketing aspect or component, through to like sprucing up the house or getting things ready for sale. So, and then obviously you've got the commission part of it, and the commission before it was not regulated. It was regulated before. So you could charge. Before it was 5% of the first 18,000 and then 2.5% plus GST afterwards. That's usually works out to around 2.6% or thereabout for sale price.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, and I guess as well, and when it comes to cost, I think just like anything, I mean, financial advice is probably a very good example of that. You normally do get what you pay for as well. So if there's somebody offering to sell your house for a carton of beer, they're probably going to get you a bit less than an actual agent that is charging a bit more than that.
Yeah, that's true. Like I think when choosing the agent, it's like I said before, is that an agent that can firstly you can trust them. All right, that's really important. You need to trust the agent that you're working with, and the one that can demonstrate that they can create competition, create urgency, and effectively get you a price in a shortest time frame. That's what most people want to hear. So I think really if you're a good agent, a common difference between a couple of percent or it's not going to make much of a difference if you look at a small percentage increase in com, like 2% to 2.5% on a sale price of 600,000. It's not much in the grand scheme of things if the agent can demonstrate the ability that they can negotiate 20,000 more.
So as far as cost is concerned, what should somebody expect to pay when it comes to selling a house? So not just agent fees, but other advertising fees, etc.
Okay. So there's two components when it comes to selling the property. You've got the marketing of the home, and then you have the commission part of it. Right. So the general rule of real estate is you should look at spending around 1% of what you think the house will sell for. So if the house sells for 600,000, you should be looking at spending around 6,000 on marketing and sprucing up the home.
That makes sense. And as far as an agent's concerned and the agent costs?
So with regards to agents, before it wasn't, commissions are not regulated. It was regulated before. So it was 5% of the first 18,000 plus 2.5% plus GST on the sale price. Some agents charge more, some agents charge less. We have just kept it fairly the same as what it was. But as you said, sometimes the cheap doesn't always mean best,
Not at all. And also, what about when it comes to, the last question I had for you, and this is a big one that's been on my mind before when selling property, but what would you say the pros and cons are to listing a house compared to going and selling it at an auction, for example?
I'll talk about a bit, like every property is different, right? No property can be marketed the same, right? That's something you gotta be mindful of. So when it comes to recommendation of a preference of sale, right? No one size fits all, right? But there are pros and cons in both methods, right? When it comes to the pros of an auction, right? With the auction process, it's a cash unconditional contract, right? There's no conditions attached to it, so there's no finance, there's no building and pest. Once that hammer falls, it's done. As a seller, you know exactly the time frame your property is going to settle. So you control the reserve price, you control the settlement price, you have full control with an auction. The other benefit of auction is it's an actual open, transparent arena where people can see exactly what somebody else is prepared to pay. It's an open environment where you can create competition and maximize the sale price for your sellers. So that's an auction process. When it comes to listing a price, and that can be a tricky one because with having a price listed, like I said to you before, is every home is only worth what a buyer is prepared to pay and a seller is willing to accept, right? That's what a house is worth. Pricing a home, yes, you have comparative relevant sales which you can use and compare certain property prices, and you can get more or less of an idea of what the property will sell for. But we all can sometimes get that price wrong. So by putting a price to anything, all you're doing is you're actually putting a limit to how much you can get, right? You're putting a ceiling to that. Or if you do price it, you run the risk of overpricing it and no one comes through the house.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense. So, and that's where it helps having an agent to navigate through those things with you, to discuss the property and circumstance.
Yeah. So with regards to pricing it, yes, I would usually we go with a submit offer strategy, or we go with an auction method of sale, right? And we have a closing date attached to it. Yeah, and then usually we obtain feedback from buyers as to where they feel the property would sell, and then we price it accordingly afterwards.
Yeah, no. And again, the more I talk to you, the more I feel that, again, finding the appropriate agent is so important. Just to ask these questions, just to pose these questions to the agent, and just to, again, have an agent that helps you, that has a strategy, that doesn't just recommend the same thing they recommend to every single property or every single area, for example.
Yeah, you see, like the thing is, and coming back to it, where I said one size doesn't fit all, or like, even with regards to auctions, like you can't auction every single property. And I say this is because sometimes you look at properties, where you feel it's important to identify your target audience first and have a look and see who's the buyers that are going to be buying or purchasing the property. I know a lot of the older demographic or the first home buyers, sometimes they're scared of the auction process, so they don't even bother looking at it. So it's very mindful of finding out who your target audience is first. Some people don't have their finance in place or ready to go. So they need to go and obtain that finance approval from a bank, and that process could take longer than expected. So, so one size definitely doesn't fit all. So it's really important that you choose the method that you feel works best for you and your client.
Yeah. And lastly, Zishaan, if anybody wanted to contact any of your offices, that are thinking of selling their house, what would you say would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, you're welcome to visit us at any one of our locations. We have 4 locations around South Brisbane. So one at Rochedale South, we have one at Rochedale Village, at our central Sunnybank office, and our Ray White Logan City office. We have a fantastic team of agents that would love to help you.
Yeah, and I'll vouch for you as well, Zishaan, that you're always there to help, even to give someone an opinion or some guidance when selling their property. It's a good team that you have there.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And what I'll do is I'll actually put the website for those offices in the description of this episode for anybody that wants to visit that as well, to make it easier.
Thank you, Michael.
And I'll vouch as well, Zishaan, for you that, any time I've needed advice, you're always there. Even your team members are always there and always happy to help.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me today.
Mate, it's a pleasure. And there's just one last thing I have to do. This is every episode. Yeah, sure. I always finish it off with a dad joke. So what kind of buildings weigh the least?
What kind of buildings weigh the least?
A lighthouse.
A lighthouse. I love it.
I had to find something for houses. I did have a joke about roofs, but I didn't mention it because I thought it would go over your head.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Zishaan, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, mate.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.